4. We got into the elevator with 2 other men and a woman wearing a flowery perfume. The elevator to the left was brown and padded with mirror strips, lining the tops and the bottoms. As the doors closed, I could see our reflections. I stood the same height as the woman, so I felt very much like fit in, even as the brown paper bag in my hand might have signaled otherwise. It seems people didn't bring their lunches to work, or if they did it wasn't in paper bags. But that was just the sort of thing I was going to learn. Why, I hadn't even arrived at the office yet, and I was collecting all the matter of professional hits. For example, I learned that having a conversation in an elevator is not always favorable when others are sharing it with you. "Mr. Drew? Earlier downstairs," I said, and he raised his fingers just so that way that explained to me I should stop. So I did. I was pretty good at cues. I've been reading far more civil ones ever since father returned. I could read a pointed finger with ease. On the 3rd floor, the man stepped out, and then on the 5th, the woman did. At the point, I spoke again. "Mr. Drew?" "Please, call me Joey," he said. There it was. I have officially made my first work friend. "Joey, I just want to thank you again for being so kind to me. I noticed downstairs you seemed to deep in thought about something. I hope I didn't interrupt any plans or anything." I tried to sound as businesslike as possible, the way people talk in office and movies. I was used to being around grocers and teachers and men who work in the trades, but people who work in towers, I was less used to their way of speaking, a word they wouldn't take kindly to mind. "Ha!" Joey said with a word as he left it, which in turn made me laugh. "You can't ever worry about interrupting my plans, kid. Old Joey is always making plans." I nodded and laughed with him as the doors opened, even as I was unsatisfied by the answer. I suppose that's what you get when you don't ask things outright. I wanted to know what he was thinking about so intently. With all the pacing and energy, I just wanted to know so much more about him. But I had asked in the wrong way. I wonder if I get the better chance to ask again. "I believe this is your stop," he said as the doors started to close again. "Is it? Thank you." I quickly dashed between them and looked back just in time to see Joey give me a wink, and then they closed completely. I felt a twinge of melancholy, but as his wife was mine intensely, it was immediately replaced with hope. After all, we work in the same building. Surely we run into each other again. Probability was high. I gave a little nod at my marigold reflection in the elevator doors, and I turned on my heel to the reception desk. I marched up with all due confidence. The secretary was on the phone, though she couldn't have been any older than 25. There was an almost world-weary quality to her, which more than confined that. Unlike me, this was most certainly not her first day on the job. She looked exhausted, and as she saw me approach, gave me the in-the-moment finger in the same way Joey had. This came, it was less apologetic, more annoyed, but that was okay. It sounded like one of those impossible phone calls. The person, on the other hand, was clearly ranting, not letting the secretary get any other word larger than a yes. To slip into the conversation, I gave her a reassuring smile, and she did seem to notice that with the slightest of nods, and seeing as there was no firms to hide behind to wait, I took a polite step back and clasped my hands, my paper bag, behind my back. The room was smaller than I anticipated, and messier too, though there was a small couch and a chair against the wall for visitors, and a pile of magazines neatly stacked on the coffee table. Perhaps after the initial assessment, I realized it wasn't the room that was messy, it was the secretary's desk that was. And to give the poor woman credit, it didn't seem like there was much she could do about it. It was a small desk to fit into a small space. She had a phone on it, she had a typewriter, but both were dwarfed by the stacks and stacks of bond paper, just everywhere, even down the side of the floor. I seriously read the test on the top sheet of the paper closet to me. The long dance. Oh, of course. Oh, how delightful. I know it's grinning into ear to ear. The secretary gave me a funny look as she managed, and I understand before the monologue. On the other end of the line continued, they were scripts. They were piles and piles of scripts. I want to go through all of them, read them all. I didn't care if they were good or bad. I never read a TV script before. It was all too too thrilling. Finally, she clinked the handle of the phone onto its holder and looked at me, her expression worn, her face drawn. She was Asian, of heavy sides. She was quite pretty nonetheless. With immaculate makeup, lipstick to match her unburned hair, she wore a gray dress with buttons that ran all the way down the front. Stylish but practical, I made a mental note to sneak out something like that. Like it for myself, when I had earned enough eventually. Wow, that person sounded exhausting. I said I was good at this sort of thing. This careful tiptoeing around a person not wholly present or happy. She nodded and brightened a little with a small eye roll. He had called me 3 times in the last 2 weeks. I think he thinks each time he's being with someone new, but no, it's always me. How tedious. I replied it and shook my head just to demonstrate how tedious I truly found it. It is. We aren't even accepting unsolicited work right now. And look, she gestured at the piles around her. Everything open is from just last week. This pile, gesture at the stack of the thick envelopes piled to the other side of the desk. I haven't even noticed yet. This is from today. That's a lot. Whether they called just to follow up or show up in person even. They don't take no for an answer. I think someone wrote a piece for the New Yorker recently or Life magazine about graduation. He laughed a little, and so do I. Anyway, none of it is your concern. What is your name again? I am Rose Silverson. I was hired as a new office production assistant. I was very proud to say that aloud. Oh, the secretary laughed again. Well, then, all of us is your concern. I suppose I take it back. Rose, lovely to meet you. I'm Gallies. Lovely to meet you too, I replied as she stood and stretched her neck as if she'd been sitting for hours, even though it was first thing and I wasn't late. I wonder how early she arrived to work. I wondered if she'd been there all night, which was the fastful think. Let me take you to your desk, and we'll see if Stephen or Papa D is interested in me and you. I nodded. I was full of excitement. Please don't take it personally. Papa D rarely is interested in meeting anyone. I hadn't even thought to be offended. I wonder if my expression had given off something I hadn't intended. Oh, of course, men are very busy people, I said, but the secretary gave me a strange glance. Well, so are women. I had slipped up again somehow. Oh yes, women too. I didn't mean to imply otherwise. You look like you're very a busy person yourself, I said with a smile. The strange look intensified. Not to say that you look. I mean to say just with the phone call and all the scripts. I stopped talking and took a deep breath. I am getting all mumbled, aren't I? Saying all the wrong things. We were standing at the door behind her desk. Gladys' hands hovering over the handle. She shook her head, and her face relaxed somewhat. It's alright, first day jigger. I had them too. I nodded. I'm glad you understand. We shared a smile, and then she opened the door. We were immediately overwhelmed by the wave of noise and energy. A tall man, no jacket, just shirt and tie, marched by so quickly it felt like we were going to be run down by the car crossing the street. The traffic was thin but fast. Anyone we encountered walking down the hallway, deeply engrossed in something that had nothing to do with the present moment, in the act of walking from one place to another. I felt like I stepped into the other world. The also had been kept well at bay by galleys. But all this energy and all these people were just a doorway. Was thrilling and strangely terrifying. I thought of all the buildings in Manhattan, the ones for businesses, the ones for living. I thought about all the people stacked on top of the other, lingering in the sky, all of us together on a tiny island. What kind of magic was that? We arrived at the frozen glass door, the name Papa Dimfrom, black letters written across it. Galleys gave me a look. Well, here we go, kind of thing, and then knocked, not breaking eye contact with me. What? It wasn't an angry question, it was a demand. Be quick about it. Stephen, I have a new PA with me. Well, good for you. A little quiet laugh at the response. Gladys shook her head. I think you should meet her. She needs to be assigned. There was a heavy, frustrated sigh in the pause. Yes, fine. Show her in. The new PA. Gladys gave me a nod. And, are you ready? And I nodded back. Oh yes, I am. Was I ever? I was certain that all this madness and rushing and stressful everything of the office by some point might potentially wear me down, like it seems to do everyone who work here, but right now it was needing. Oh, to have stressful, important, timely things going on, to have deadlines and the last minute rushes, to have a purpose. I still haven't entirely determined what mine would be yet. But until I did, the purpose was to find a purpose, and I was terribly excited at the prospect. She opened the door to the small corner office. The blinds were down, and was filled with artificial light. It smoked an hairy man in his 40s, full head of hair slicked back and with a streak of silver running through it. A thick mustache and the mutton chops sat hunched over the stack of paperwork. His cigarette was slowly burning away, untouched in an ashtray, filled almost to the brim. A single line of smoke curled toward the ceiling. "At least let some light in, Stephen," said Gladys, sliding and walking right past the barrier of the desk to the blinds behind him. I have a strange feeling then that she opened them, letting the harsh daylight filter into already harsh environment. A slight panic, my heart jumped into my throat. I felt my pulse quicken. I wanted to reach my arm out and tell her to stop. But I remember this was not my father. It was not our living room, and there was any danger of provoking the puddles. I took it in a measured deep breath and to calm myself. For his part, Mr. Putnam or Stephen or Papa D just squinted and grunted, but he didn't turn away from his work or even make a sign of protest. Gladys reached over his shoulder and stabbed out the cigarette as she picked up ashtray. "I'll clean this now. Now, Papa D, this is Rose. She's our new PA." She bent closer to his ear and hissed, "Be nice." Mr. Papa D marveled, but once again it didn't argue. Gladys marched back to the door, gave me a satisfied nod, then she closed it behind her and she added, "Good luck." With that, we were alone. Only then did I start to feel a little awkward. There was another chair in the room, but it was covered in papers. It seemed to be a general running theme about this office, but woeful lack of storage space. "Would you like me to file those?" I asked it. It felt like a simple, easy, day one task for a new girl, and something that would be helpful to him too. Mr. Pumphrey looked up at me, then for the first time, then over the pile, then again. "When on earth would I want you to do that?" "No, of course not. Just sit and be quiet for a moment." That was easier said than done. I stood as respectfully as I could, holding my lunch in front of me, politely waiting as the man scribbled hurriedly on the paper in front of him, and then suddenly grabbed it with a white hot fury and crumpled it into a ball into his hands, throwing it against the wall with an effortful, anguished roar. "Are you sure I can help you with anything?" I asked it. He looked at me, stared at me down. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and reached for his cigarette in his ashtray. Finding the whole thing missing, he clenched his head into a fist. "What's your name?" he barked it. "Rose?" "Well, Rose, let's get this out of the way. Just call me Papa D. I hate it. But the old thing is very clever, and you know how creative types are. Clever is the point for them. So just call me that. Don't call me Mister. I hate that more. Don't call me Stephen. Just when Gladys wants to make sure I don't bite her head off. Got it?" "Yes, sir," I replied it. Already a fun nickname for Maria Boss. This day was going wonderfully well. I had to try very hard to hide my giddiness. Papa D approached me further, not in a strange way, more like an alien landing on Earth and stepping on this flying saucer and seeing humans for the first time kind of way. "How old are you? You look like a child." "I'm almost 18. "Shouldn't you be in school?" "I skipped a year." I didn't want to explain the whole story. Usually people just assume I was very smart, and since that was a nice thing to have people assume about me, I didn't correct them. What they didn't know is when father was away at war, mother didn't like the idea of being alone, so she taught me from home till he come back. But when he come back, everything was so fraught that she made a mistake about which grade I should be in. I never minded. I didn't know any better. I was just happy to be at real-life school. I even venture to say, even though I was a year younger than everyone, I rather did it sealed. "Oh, fantastic, just fantastic." Papa D laughed now. "They sent me children," he said to the wall. "Fantastic." Turned back to me. "So tell me, Rose, what do you know about television businesses?" "Not very much, if I'm honest." I laughed. "Is that the packed lunch?" Papa D pointed out the paper bag lunch between my two hands. "Yes?" He shook his head. He looked almost dumbstruck. "Right, well, as you can see, we are running on fumes here. I'm the producer who oversees the daily running of this studio. If you don't know what that means, you're an idiot. I'm not going to waste my breath to explain anything to an idiot." "Of course not, sir. What a waste of time," I replied it. Papa D stared at it, just a little reaction, almost approving, but I didn't know him very well enough just to know for certain. I'll figure him out soon enough. I wasn't worried. "Yes, So he found his train of thought again. We have a half dozen shows we run from this office. 4 are certainly on air. We were in the production on the other 2. You're a PA for all of them, but mostly you'll be working out of this office. You're the grunt. You're going the machine. You do not have opinions, do not have suggestions. You do what you're told, and do it fast. Got it? Got it, I replied. It all seemed very straightforward. Can you make coffee? He asked it. Yes, sir. Good, or you'll be fired. Okay, well, your presence fills me with existential dread. You personify everything that is wrong with humanity, and your eagerness to please makes me want to vomit. I nodded. Gladys will set you over the desk out with the teaming matches. Do not make small talk with anyone, please. When you go to your lunch break, for God's sake, hide yourself in your bag. It was too awful to look at. Of course, sir. I squeezed the bag a little tighter in my hands and crickled a little too loudly. Papa D eventually flinched. Get out. Just leave. I'm done. He shifted in his seat and hunched over the paperwork once more. It didn't feel right, just turning around and leaving, so I did what I heard people did when I visit with the brand new Queen of England. I walked backward, away from him, toward the door, bumping into it softly. I was a little off with my remembering its exact location. Papa D sighed hard at the sound. It spurred me into faster action. I turned and whipped open the door, closing it hastily behind me. What a rush! I couldn't help but smile now, all alone in the hall. Said the young man. Ain't nothing to smile about, newbie, said the young man, practically flying past me down the hall. I didn't even have time to reconsider his personal philosophy as Gladys suddenly materialized my other side, whisked me away to the bullpen, as she called it, a suddenly wide open part of the office filled with a dozen or so desks, and people everywhere. The din was exhilarating, and surprisingly, where had all been this whole time. I was in love with everything, the surprises around every corner, and even my little desk in the middle of it all. I quickly hid my lunch bag under it and sat with my eyes folded on its tops and waited. Was I supposed to be perfected? I wanted to be, but surely everything so went against Dr. D's strict instructions. I was to follow orders, not to seek them out. But oh, I thought as a scout panic, ordered man in the wrinkled suit rushed past me, papers falling out of his arms. How I just wanted to offer a comforting hand to everyone in this office. All they seemed ready to burst, as if I tap on the shoulder would cause them to explode in a puff of white smoke. I could help. I was hired to help. Here, by the galleys, she dropped a stack of packages on my desk, unopened screenplays in their mafia envelopes. Go through these, toss ones that are not good. The rest will be go through and decide who gets them. I nodded. How do I know a script is no good? I asked her, reaching over the first envelope. Dally smoothed her hair and gave me a nod to a gentleman across the room who was waving intensely at her. Trust me, you'll know. I didn't find the answer particularly reassuring that I also knew I was pushed far enough my initial question. Just do, Rose. Just do, Rose. Just do. I have faith in myself that I figure it out. Turned out it really wasn't a compliment asked away asked at all. How do some people even look at themselves in the mirror knowing they have sent such poorly formatted and punctuation work? It was hardly someone who could measure myself by my good taste, especially good taste in art. But at the very least, I had graduated from high school. I could read words on the page, which seemed, in some cases, more than what natural writers who put those words on the page could do. But there was a cover letters that occupied those scripts. Many were just reflections of their general lack of writings abilities. There was one that was, honest to goodness, dreadfully more like a ransom letter than a query. I put it to the side for Gladys to show to Papa D. I didn't want anyone to get hurt, but when she come to collect the 4 acceptable, at least to me, the scripts, she just laughed at my concern. Is it from Hemlock Moore? She asked, glazing over the title pages of the screenplays in her arms. Why, yes, I said, quite shocked. Oh, we're getting somewhere for him at least once a month. He targets all the studios. You think it's just some game for him? We didn't even know that's his real name. Probably not. She gave me a small smile. You were very quick with this, since no one else here will say it. I am impressed. I feel that wonderful warm fuzzy feeling you get when you've been complimented for a job well done. Thank you. Well, break for lunch. We'll see you back here in half an hour. She turned on her heel, leaving me surrounded with discarded inwards a medley of envelopes. These poor little screenplays destined for the trash. I didn't feel nearly as sad as I thought. I was dropping them into the garbage. Lunch was the tricky matter. I wasn't entirely sure what I could hyper Papa D's instructions, so I immediately made my decision to head downstairs and find a spot somewhere outside where I wouldn't be noticed. There was a little park around the corner and an available bench, even though it was a little difficult eating my sandwich with my mitts on. I did it quite successfully. I was feeling downright proud of my abilities and returned to the office refreshed, full, and content. "Where the devil have you been?" Papa D exploded out of his office as I passed the door, making me jump. "Lunch," I expounded back, not really thinking, just reacting. "Where? The moon? We won't find you anywhere." He was staring down at me, and yet I wasn't afraid. He was just an intense man, but I found him strangely lovable. It was just that feeling I had about him. I could tell where there was kindness somewhere in there, buried deep down, very deep down. "I went to this little park around the corner," I replied it. "Outside? It's 30 degrees out there." "I know," glared harder. "I want to make sure no one saw me eat my lunch. I thought it would be the safest." And that Papa D rolled his eyes and huffed hard. Obviously, I was speaking in hyperbole. "My God, what kind of a monster do you think I am?" "Oh, I didn't think you were a monster at all," I said with a smile. That seemed to catch him a little off guard, and he took a small step back toward the office and looked at me with his suspicions. "I didn't say I was a monster. I'm not just some complete monstrous." "I understand." We stared at each other then. "Was there something you needed?" "There had to be, obviously." "Was there something I needed?" He replied under breath. "Go down to 7. Joey Drew is looking for you." "Joey Drew?" I asked. I hadn't expected that. I immediately had butterflies. "Drew show? It's new. It's for kids. Don't care for it. They film it on 7, and he asked for you. He needs an extra PA today." "The Joey Drew's show?" He had his own show? I hadn't realized how important the man was. "God, woman, what do you want from me? It's a show about his Bendy cartoons. It's what it sounds like. Why am I explaining any of this to you? Just get on with it already." He stormed into his office, slamming the door behind him. I stood there in shock, the butterflies now a tornado and my face getting hot. Not because of this dramatic exit, but because I finally understood. I couldn't quite wrap my head around it. Joey Drew was the man behind the Bendy cartoons. Joey Drew? The man in the foyer? The one I rode the elevator with? The one who had been requested that I be his PA for today? Joey Drew was the creator of Bendy and Alice Angel? Oh, and Boris? Who could forget darling Boris? I had been young when the cartoons played before the movies on the big screen. But the memories we have from when you were a young child are the ones that last a lifetime. I never met a famous person before, let alone a person that had been so important to early life. I want to blush now, thinking about standing behind the firm and meeting Joey Drew himself. But I just couldn't feel the shame. I was too overwhelmed with excitement about it all. What an amazing day this has been. And it was only just after lunch.